Hey there, folks. Thanks for joining us for Plan to Protect with Melodie Bissell, the safest podcast on the internet. As you know, my name is Joshua Bissell, and I'm the producer of this weekly podcast where we tackle topics around abuse prevention and vulnerable sector protection. We're continuing our series in the lead up to our trauma care conference at the end of October. We'd love to see you join us for that. Melodie's tackling a topic that's particularly close to her heart, but is also something that many of us face as we work with the vulnerable sector and take care of those around us and support our communities. We hope that this episode is informative, it's encouraging, and it is something that you'll be able to share with your friends and families, co-workers, and those who work with the vulnerable sector. Thank you again for joining us for Plan to Protect with Melodie Bissell, the safest podcast on the internet. Here's Melodie.
Hello. I've been often asked the question, how do you continue to do what you do day in and day out? Hearing stories of abuse, facing opposition when organizations resist striving for a high standard of protection. How do you deal with hearing stories of the failure of educators, community members, clergy, individuals of faith that have abused a vulnerable person? A similar question is, how do you cope with the pain and suffering you hear from victim survivors of abuse? Today, we are going to talk about the term vicarious trauma. And I'm going to share from my own experience how I have faced this for the past 20 years. To be brutally honest, it is difficult. It's difficult to hear the stories. One issue that we will be including in our upcoming trauma care conference is this term, vicarious trauma. Today, I'm going to unpack that definition for you. I'm going to give you just a taste of what we will be talking about in our upcoming conference. Some people use the term vicarious trauma. Some people call it empathetic strain or secondary victimization. Others call it compassionate fatigue. Whatever term you call it, it is real. There are many caregivers that experience this day in and day out. One of the most important aspects of coping with intensity of the work that we do is to acknowledge it and name it and recognize the impact that it can have on each one of us. Let me read for you the definition of vicarious trauma. It is a process of change resulting from empathetic engagement with trauma survivors. Anyone who engages sympathetically and empathetically with survivors of traumatic incidences, torture, and material relating to trauma is potentially affected by vicarious trauma, including doctors and healthcare professionals, social workers, child protection workers. I can remember a time that I very much experienced this, and it became very real to me. We had been conducting a 2-day certification training online as a webinar. We had approximately 30 people in the course. We ran the course over 2 consecutive days, a Thursday and a Friday. On the Friday, our numbers increased to close to 40 individuals who were taking our popular Plan to Protect, Train the Trainer course. Because we were doing it as a webinar, I had an opportunity to get to know a number of the individuals. I found out later that the day was also Professional Development Day, and many children were at home. On Monday, I received a phone call from one of the students from the course. She was in tears, and she said to me, "Melodie, I don't believe that I qualify to be a trainer with Plan to Protect. I think I need to withdraw from the course." When I asked her why she felt that she could not carry on in the course, she told me that on the Friday, she was also caring for her 4-year-old niece, along with her own children. Her son, who was 13 years of age, was helping her take care of the children while she was juggling the Train the Trainer course. Even though we had a number of breaks throughout the day, she relied heavily on her son. In the evening on Friday, she got a phone call from her sister. Her 4-year-old niece had disclosed to her when she was getting into bed that evening that her cousin, the 13-year-old son of the student in the Train the Trainer course, had sexually abused her. Her sister called to tell her what she heard from her 4-year-old, accusing her that she wasn't really watching her children if this had occurred, and telling her that she didn't want to have anything else to do with the family. I cannot imagine the pain that this family had to endure that weekend as they had to confront their 13-year-old son and they had to decide what the next step of action would be. Hearing that story, my heart was broken. I thought I had heard everything that I could imagine hearing in this industry. Never would I have even imagined that as we were training people on how to train volunteers and staff on abuse prevention and safeguarding, that during that live webinar, that there was a child that was being abused in one of the homes of the students. As this family had to unpack this horrific event, and you can imagine how very difficult it would have been for them, they learned that their 13-year-old son had also been sexually abused for many years by a neighbor. How heartbreaking. I also felt the pain. At that point, I almost wanted to pack it in. I couldn't comprehend how we could continue, knowing that as we were doing a live webinar, that abuse was happening under the roof of one of our participants. There's so much involved in that one case study and that one story. This family was very brave as they sought out both legal counsel and they reported it to law enforcement. They had to enter into a long series of restoration and reconciliation and counseling and therapy. It is difficult to do the work that I do. And if you do safeguarding, you too will find it difficult at times when you are responding to incidences of abuse, disclosures, allegations, or trying to navigate suspicions of abuse. It is difficult to read the continued stories of abuse that happen within churches, schools, daycares, within our communities. For myself, I wake each morning, sometimes with a heavy heart, but always with anticipation, because I know that I've been called to the work that I do. This echoes a quote from Eugene Peterson. I'm working the angles. When I quit my day's work, nothing essential stops. I prepare for sleep, not with a feeling of exhausted frustration, because there's so much yet undone, so much unfinished, but with expectancy. A new day is about to begin. As we hear stories like the one that we just shared with you, and this is just one of many that we hear almost every week at Plan to Protect, we wonder if we can carry on. But on the other hand, we also are reminded that there's still so much to do. These stories fuel us to carry on. There is a difference between burnout and vicarious trauma. Burnout refers to the physical and emotional erosion that someone can experience when they feel regularly unsatisfied, powerless, and overwhelmed with the work that they have to do. Vicarious trauma, on the other hand, refers to the profound shift in a worldview that's being repeatedly exposed to the traumatic experiences of others. Over time, you are profoundly impacted by the hurt and the pain of others. In our upcoming trauma care conference, we will be sharing so much more about vicarious trauma and how to be a caregiver. We will also provide you many tips on how to protect yourself from vicarious trauma. Here are just a few strategies that you can begin to apply to your life today to help you if you are bearing the burden of others and finding yourself impacted by this trauma. If you are feeling you are suffering from vicarious trauma, try following some of these coping strategies to reduce the risk. First, increase your self-observation. Recognize and chart your signs of stress, vicarious trauma, and burnout. Take care of yourself emotionally. Engage in relaxing and self-soothing activities and self-care, such as meditation, exercise, prayer. Nurture your own self-care. Look after your physical and your mental well-being. Seek social support from colleagues, family members, and friends. I think I've shared earlier on podcasts how I do this personally myself. Every Monday morning, I have 50 people that pray for me on a regular basis. And the first thing I do every Monday morning is sit down at my computer, write a very quick email with no bells and whistles, just sharing ways that people can pray for me that week. I have found that prayer support, those friends and family members holding me up and caring for me throughout every week. Finally, another strategy is by taking training opportunities. When you invest in greater knowledge and input from others who are in similar settings to yourself, you will find that you can add things to your toolbox, your coping strategies, your responses to help you when you face vicarious trauma. That's why we are inviting you to our upcoming virtual trauma care conference on October 28, 2021. This is a full-day conference where we will be bringing in experts, individuals who know how to help you provide care to individuals that are experiencing trauma and how to protect and care for yourself. We hope you join us. Talk to you next week. Take care. Bye.